somehow people in BJP thought that Ayodhya temple would do what Pulwama had done in 2019. That has not happened. And thank God, thank Ram, all that we did was a mix of old style psephology and what the journalists do. So what happens with authoritarian rulers is this. After some point, they start believing that everything can be managed or everyone can be coerced. Mr. Modi had said, "Abhi to sirf trailer dekha hai." I would also say, "Abhi to sirf trailer dekha hai. Ab dekhiye aage kya."
The long drawn out, intense battle for the 18th Lok Sabha election is over. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is all set to form his third government as Prime Minister. But there's no doubt about the fact that the Prime Minister and his party, the BJP, have emerged diminished, bruised, and completely reliant on support from their allies in order to survive the next 5 years. Now, this is a far cry from the outcome that Mr. Modi had been guaranteeing in the run-up to the election. So very few people saw this coming, and those who did perhaps did not believe what they saw coming. My guest today is not one of those people. He predicted exactly this outcome that we are experiencing today or witnessing today. And he has, in the past 10 years, as this fierce ideological battle has played out in the political arena, used a moral and an ethical lens to participate, comment, and analyze politics today. Please welcome the man of the moment, Yogendra Yadav. Yogendra, thank you so much for making time. I know exactly how busy you are and how everybody wants to listen to what you have to say. You've been making a lot of waves for the prediction that you made, but more importantly, a lot of things that you have said and you have worked to get people to hear and understand over the past 5 years and more have really now finally you've got everyone's attention. Let's put it like that, Yogendra. You now have everybody's attention. What's your quick reaction? How are you feeling today, given that this is something that you've been at for a while?
Honestly, the first reaction is everyone's attention for the wrong reason. Because I did not set out to win the prediction race.
Yeah.
This is not a T20 match where this is not a betting or a share market thing where you get it right and you are elated. I got it right. No, I never set out to get it right. I wanted to make it right in a sense, because the real point was this. I felt that as a political worker, as someone who thought this election was not about kaun banega pradhanmantri. This election really was about our destiny as a country, about whether this republic survives or not. And when I saw media, opinion polls, predictions, psephology being misused to create an impression which was completely mistaken impression to, in a sense, mislead the nation, even if the intent was not to mislead. The outcome was that you were misleading the nation and, in essence, contributing to stealing of the mandate. So then I put on my old hat, as it were, and said, okay, I must use, because if I can see that this is wrong, as I started traveling, I must confess that when all those pre-election polls arrived, I was depressed for a few days. And then I said, maybe it's worth checking out. When I went out and saw this was not at all the case, then I said, okay, maybe it's my duty then to come out and speak. So I'm happy, I'm satisfied that I did my duty. Not so much about the final outcome and hitting the bullseyes, as it were. That's a byproduct, that's an additional thing, that's a bonus. But the important thing is that for the 2 months in the run-up to the election, I kept saying, no, this is not the truth. Uttar Pradesh would have a political earthquake. That's a word I used. I kept saying that BJP is not crossing 272. They are no way getting a majority. Now, most people thought at that point that I'm a political activist, my loyalty, my predilections are quite clear, which I made no secret of. And usually we believe political workers are doing propaganda. They're telling lies. That's the usual thing.
And that you're creating a counter narrative.
That's right. So I should not shy away from the fact that I was
That you
thinking
needed to create that counter narrative because of the overwhelming narrative that was being created, right? Which was an incorrect one.
exactly. So
Mm.
there was the dominant narrative, and the dominant narrative was false.
Mm.
I knew it as a survey researcher. When we
Mm.
traveled, when I looked at the evidence, I knew what they are doing, saying is false. And then I asked myself, what's my duty? Some friends called me to say, "Acha hai tumhe feel ho raha hai. Don't get into this business. That's not your business. You earned such a reputation for 30 years about psephology. Don't ruin your reputation." When I wrote the first piece, well-wishers advised me, don't ruin your reputation. Don't stake your entire professional reputation on this. And I asked myself, I remembered something lovely that Lalita Ramdas told me once about Admiral Ramdas, who's no more with us. Admiral Ramdas, she asked him some question, and he said, if not me, who? If not now, when? And if I say, well, I must sort of preserve my reputation. Famous people, I'm not so famous, but famous people tend to be very careful about their reputation and therefore end up saying nothing. So I said, what would I do with this reputation? If not now, when? And if I don't speak with 30 years of experience of elections, psephology, and survey, who would speak then? So that's what I started.
What did you do that made you get it right? Because I've been hearing interviews, trying to read what the other pollsters who were commissioned by media houses and were putting things out there have said. So there's a lot of talk about the research methodology, and one of the things being about the size, the representativeness, rather, not the size, the representativeness of the sample size, and also the fact, and this is something I heard Prashant Kishore say, that you are underestimating the fear factor that stops people from giving you an honest response when you have a very strong party or government, that's in power. So there are many reasons being offered. What do you put down the failure of the exit polls on this one, and what did you do in terms of your sampling, in terms of your methodology?
Anuradha, when you get it right, the temptation is to say everything that we did was right. And when someone else gets it wrong, the easiest thing in the world is to give them a kick and say what they did was everything wrong. That's not, I really don't want to get into that narrative and the manner in which it has played out in the media, Yogendra Yadav versus Prashant Kishore.
I hear what you're saying, but that's not my intent. Given that you have come to certain results, you got it right. What did you do to get to the figures you got? Is there something in your methodology that would help people understand how how market research, at the end of the day, this is market research. How was it conducted so that it was effective? And look at lay people who need to start questioning.
So in a sense, first I wish to say that, look, scientific random sample surveys are essential, even if they got it wrong. It is not to say that my impressionistic things are better than scientific random sample surveys. No, impressionistic things and anecdotal evidence. In the last instance, what we did would be called something in between anecdotal and proper scientific random sample. Proper scientific random samples are still superior. They are still the best thing, even if they happen to get it wrong. And in a minute, I'll say why I think they got it wrong. So I cannot possibly claim that my method is superior. It so happens that I was correct this time. And I was correct for a very, very simple reason. Honestly, all that we did was a mix of old style psephology and what the journalists do. What do journalists? They get a vehicle, they go to the road, they speak to ordinary people. But usually a journalist doesn't have the time. She has to file a report by the email. So how many people can she possibly meet? And you are in a new place. How much in-depth stuff you can do. What we did was we were a team of 5 or 6, and we traveled for about 10, 15 days. A team of 5 or 6, we would go to a village, typically a village with multiple tolas, mohallas with different communities. 6 of us get out of the car, go to 6 different tolas. We set ourselves 35 minutes, 40 minutes, regroup after 40 minutes. We report to each other what we heard. And by the time we've done the reporting, we are in the next spot where we go again, either a village or these small junctions which connect 5 or 10 villages. Those are places where we spoke to ordinary people, did not speak to dhabawala, did not speak to panwalas, did not speak to the
Driver,
usual suspects, and
local.
certain a driver, and not to any politician, not to any political worker, or to a journalist or an intellectual. Speak to ordinary people. Ask them about, don't ask an ordinary person to be a psephologist. Don't ask them ki hawa kahan chal rahi. That can be a nice conversational thing. But finally draw the conversation to what did you do last time? What do you propose to do this time? And the amazing thing, Anuradha, is that 8 or 9 out of 10 people are very happy to say that. As long as you are not asking them in a group of 20, as long as you are sitting quietly with them, talking to them, किसी जूता वाला के साथ आप पॉलिश भी करवा रहे हैं, उसका दुख सुख भी सुन रहे हैं, तो फिर इस बार क्या चल रहा, आराम से बताएं. Indians love to talk. Any notion of privacy, and there's no privacy at all in much of rural and small town India. So people were very happy to speak. So all this thing about people not telling you the truth, simply not the case.
So this fear factor thing you think is overplayed?
Yes, I think it is overplayed. There may be an element of that in West Bengal, and I experienced a bit of that in Gujarat in yesteryears, not now. I've not visited Gujarat recently. Except a couple of places, there is no fear factor. Of course, you can't brazenly go to someone and say, "Kisko vote de rahe hain?" You have to sit aside, you have to take your time, you have to quietly ask them, and so on. And people are happy to tell. So we would do that. And then we would try and the simple answer, I'll take the example of Uttar Pradesh, which is at the heart of the difference. In Uttar Pradesh, in the first 2 days, the pattern was so striking. We could not meet a single Samajwadi Party Congress voter who said, "I'm going to shift this time." Everyone was sticking to what they had done earlier. BSP voters were a little unsure, not quite willing to identify themselves as BSP voters, and would then quietly tell you, ki, maybe cycle this time, which was such a major shift from BSP to SP, was unheard of. But they would quietly hint at it and move on, almost not acknowledge it to themselves. And BJP voter, every third or fourth, or in some cases, every sixth voter, would tell you, इनको वोट दिया था, इस बार नहीं दूंगा. Quite openly, quite straightforward, nothing mysterious, no secret technique. So all that we were doing was a very simple thing of speaking to ordinary people. And the funny thing, Anuradha, is that every Indian is a psephologist. There must be a few crore psephologists in this country. Every Indian loves to talk about public opinion. Public ye samajhti. But we don't want to speak to public. No one speaks to public. And you ask someone, अच्छा हवा चल रही है, अच्छा क्यों चल रही है? नहीं, मैंने उससे पूछा था, कैंडिडेट की बॉडी लैंग्वेज से मुझे लग गया कि वो तो इस बार हार रहा है. अरे, how does the candidate know it? Poor fellow doesn't know anything. So the simple thing that we did was to speak to ordinary people in their ordinary, simple, homely context. And within 2 days, it was quite clear that this was happening. And then we spent the remaining 8-10 days. I must have traveled about 1,000 kilometers within Uttar Pradesh. And in the remaining 8-10 days, we were just reconfirming by going to a very different site, different demographic composition, different contest types, different regions. And everywhere we got exactly the same pattern. It was so striking that then it gave me the confidence to say, and I think it was just after the first phase and before the second phase that I said, Uttar Pradesh mein rajnaitik bhuchaal aane wala hai. Because having done this, then you had to do old style psephology to say, all right, we are possibly looking at about 5 to 10% swing away from BJP. What would that swing mean in terms of seats? That was strictly old style, uh, you know, computer simulations. My colleagues did that for me. And then we saw that there was no way they were crossing 50. They could slide to 40, but then we kept conservative to say 50 se upar nahi aa raha. And no one was willing to believe it. So, and why did others polls get it wrong? I have a hypothesis. I'm not sure unless I see their raw data. Unfortunately, everyone begins by doubting motives. I wouldn't do that. I think they actually genuinely got it wrong. And
Also
they got
because
it wrong.
at the end of the day, this is market research, this specialized market research. These are businesses they run, their reputations are on the line. So this mala fide intent, you don't feel, you absolutely feel that it was not mala fide intent that has got all these exit polls so wrong in terms of the seats they attributed to
Let
the.
me put it this way. I would not begin by assuming mala fide intent. Unfortunately, in our country, especially in thinking about politics, we begin with intent, not with arguments.
Yeah.
And you see, there are four mistakes that every opinion poll can make. Number one, and I think in this, and you make a good forecast because you are lucky. One error cancels the other error, and then you look very wise. In my case, too, many of my errors canceled other errors. I underestimated the BJP NDA in Bihar, but I overestimated them in Uttar Pradesh. So these errors canceled each other out. In the case of other opinion polls, the big ones, 401 versus 290, now that's a huge mistake. But I think it's a combination of four mistakes which piled upon each other. One, undersampling. Except CSDS, which does a very strict random sampling from voters' list. Most opinion polls and exit polls use a method of sampling where they end up undersampling the poorest of the poor, the weakest person, and the less articulate. As a result, if these are the ones moving away from BJP, then you are bound to underestimate it. Number two, there is underreporting. As I mentioned to you, if you go and ask someone, who did you vote for? Modi ji. Sit down with them for 5 minutes and they say, kya kiya? Nahi, unhe nahi dala. So that's the survey wouldn't capture it. You have to have a 10-minute conversation, relaxed conversation, which the surveyor has no time for because he has to get his 60 interviews in a day. So underreporting, especially in a state like Uttar Pradesh, they're not lying, but it's just that you've not given them time. Number three, there is under-aggregation. When those voting figures are reported to the pollster, there are many undecided voters. And pollster fixes those undecided depending on other answers that they may have given. So I'm someone who was undecided, but I said Modi is a good PM. So the pollster
you fall into
assumes
the bucket of
BJP.
You get that vote. Right.
And finally, there is a vote seat conversion error. Because no pollster gets a straight figure of 62. They get a figure of anything between 58 to 65. So you would adjust at 65 rather than at the midpoint. And that is where some bias creeps in, which is, when I looked at all the polls saying something between 350 to 400, I asked myself, were they all adjusting their raw reporting at the upper end of the range that they had? In every single state, they were adjusting it to the upper end, which is to say, if I end up slightly overestimating the BJP, that's all right. But my God, if I end up underestimating them, that's not done.
So, not mala fide intention then maybe necessarily, but a strong bias for a certain outcome that you're primed to believe that you're expecting.
Yeah, exactly. So it's neither, I would not begin by assuming a mala fide, but as you rightly said, I wouldn't envy the situation that Pradeep Gupta found himself in. I'm a pollster and I know what happens when the whole country is watching you on television and you get it wrong. even if it's not a lot of money riding on your success, all kinds of things. So I would not begin by assuming that if someone gives me a proper evidence to say this is how that was manipulated, this is what fed into share market and satta market, then it's a different matter. But to my mind, it's neither simple mana fide nor a simple technical end. It's something in between, which we need to understand. And what made me say so is that I was actually looking at some other polls which were done outside the television revenue for academic purposes, scientific purposes. Two or three other polls I looked at. When I looked at the exit polls, I requested some broad sense from these other polls. And strangely, none of them was saying what the televised exit polls were saying. So that struck me, and therefore I just stuck to what I was saying, and luckily that was all.
It's quite fascinating because we have very little knowledge of how a poll is conducted, really. And we are all, as the layperson or the public, really interested in those numbers. So it's very fascinating to hear you explain how things could have gone wrong and how even our biases and perhaps, conflict of interest. We have to accept the fact that there is conflict of interest for many of these parties, isn't it?
That's an important point you make, Anuradha, and I really wish. And so instead of either this coronation of pollsters that used to happen, dancing and mithai and so on, or flogging of pollsters, both of these are just obscene things in public life. Instead of that, can we think of professionalization? And the first point of that professionalization would be something you mentioned right away, just plain disclosures. If I come on a television channel and give my exit poll figures, I must begin by saying I'm from Bharat Jodo Abhiyan, which has taken a position in this election, and that we are opposed to the BJP. We are supporting India candidates in this election. Without that disclosure, I'm being dishonest to my viewers. Similarly, should we not have the right to know that someone who's making a big forecast on which the whole country is betting and doing all kinds of things, suppose that person is almost an in-house pollster for the BJP or for Congress for that matter. As a viewer, I have a right to know this. I'm being underinformed. And that is something no one does. And the second is, again, an elementary thing. And I don't blame pollsters. Honestly, if you ask me, I blame the editors. Every editor must ask everyone who comes to publish polls, show me your methodology, show me your sample size, show me your sampling technique, and show me the profile of your sample. How many men, how many women, rural, urban, poor, is Dalit, SC, ST, OBC. Just show me the profile. How do I believe you? And I will make the profile public. If we start doing these two elementary things, disclosure and transparency about method, so much of what goes in the name of opinion polls in this country can be controlled and regulated. That is what we need to do instead of this obscene thing about flogging and reading their motives and playing all kinds of games. I don't believe.
Also, I think, where the media was concerned, this sort of blind acceptance, almost sort of blind acceptance that this is correct, not caveating, saying these are exit polls, this is research, this is not the final result. There seemed to be a desire to believe those exit polls. And I think that ties into the narrative that has evolved, that the media has created for mainstream media, and large parts of mainstream media has collaborated to create with the incumbent government.
Honestly, exit polls are the most harmless things in the world. Because they don't affect a single voter. They affect the share market. They affect satta market. I couldn't care less for these things. They don't affect politics. They don't affect voting. They affect counting in some little way, but they don't affect very much. I'm more concerned about the pre-election opinion polls that came. Now, if you look at it, from 2022 onwards, the media had started saying that 2024 is a done deal. This is immediately after Uttar Pradesh election. Because I remember, because I was on television channels countering this, that this is 2022 and you're saying 24 is a done deal. Up to 2029 ka socho. This is the narrative that started 2 years ago. And every single thing fed into that narrative. And opinion poll errors, which could otherwise be technical errors, errors that any pollster can make, once they fit into that narrative, then they don't look like innocent errors. And that even that exit poll, which is otherwise a harmless little game, that too looks like a major political conspiracy because it fits into that overall narrative. And honestly, not to put too fine a point on it, I thought the entire mainstream media of this country, with a very few honorable exceptions, they 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 were acting as spokespersons of the BJP. Being Human, I think, has brought out this little video. What they've done is something nice. They have put Mr. Modi's 70 interviews or so. They've taken clips from that and put it together in 10 minutes. Not 1 second of what Mr. Modi is saying, but how the anchors are behaving with Mr. Modi. It's cringeworthy. I mean, as someone who's been in the media, Anuradha, I don't think you can watch that and feel proud of being a journalist. An interview by a major agency, ANI, opens its interviews by saying, Prime Minister, isn't this election a mere formality? This is the opening of an interview in the middle of the election. If this is not propaganda, what is propaganda? And Rajat Sharma, if you look at the clips, this is something you would normally think twice before saying these things in a political rally. You wouldn't say those things. So is this media? That's what worried me. And sort of it fits into that pattern. And therefore, more than countering the exit poll, because everyone focused on the mistake of the exit poll and how I got it right. Honestly, that was the least of my concern. My real concern was pre-election poll and the reporting being done by mainstream media, which was atrocious, absolute, not just atrocious, which was motivated. And yes, here I am willing to read this was motivated and designed to serve the ruling party. And honestly, the record of the Indian media has been shocking in the entire run up to this election. And now that we're speaking about this, just in parenthesis, I do want to mention that some journalists, and happily, most of them were women, actually traveled and they reported, and their reports were some of the most sane reporting in this election. So that's really, I mean, if I can think of 10 names, maybe 7 of them would be women who were traveling and reporting the reality. They were not all saying BJP is losing, but they were at least doing honest reporting. That is what was needed.
Given that we now have a minority government for the next 5 years ostensibly, what is the impact this will have on the health of the Indian democracy? What do you say are the parameters people should look at to say this is a good, healthy, vibrant democracy? And how much will this result affect the health of India's democracy?
Thanks for asking the right question. A, for calling it a minority government, which is what it is. And B, focusing not on policy paralysis. I mean, all kinds of, I mean, from day one, once again, media has started setting a narrative. Oh my God, it's a coalition government. Oh my God, would there be policy paralysis? Oh my God, would we have concessions being made and so on and so forth? I mean, the life of this country of 140 crore people is seen from the prism of maybe 140,000. It's that prism which sets it. The real question is, what does it do to this country? What does it do to democracy? And honestly, rather, this is, we can breathe. Not so much inside India, but outside India now, and for most scholars of India, India was being described for the last few years as competitive authoritarianism. Because we don't need to deal with the simple binary of democracy versus dictatorship. In the world, most other countries are hybrid things. And the Indian type of hybrid was called competitive authoritarianism. What this election has done is that the competitive bit has been raised a bit, and authoritarianism bit has been diminished a bit. I wouldn't say that it has changed dramatically, because we still are in a country where formal democratic procedures have been diminished, civil liberties have been reduced, and media freedom and other freedoms have been considerably diminished. That situation doesn't dramatically change. But I see the following positives. Number one, in parliament, not only would we have more of opposition, we should expect to hear more voices of opposition. Number two, in the media, although you should know more than I do, I don't expect again a U-turn, but I expect a few degrees of change, some little balancing to take place. At least the brazen manner in which they were campaigning for the ruling party and turning all their guns against the opposition, which made for such poor view, that may diminish. I really hope it would. And there's no dearth of honest journalists in this country. Each of them would have little more strength and when they speak to their editor. Third, judiciary, which has turned its eyes away from some very important things to do with the future of this country. How do you read the constitution of this country? And some very important cases are coming up. There is the CAA case, to my mind, a complete open and shut case of violation of constitution, or the appointment of the election commissions themselves, the law which was made, which clearly runs foul of the Supreme Court judgment. So I expect the Supreme Court and the entire judiciary, which has to be mindful of the political context, for them to be able to read the letter and law of the country of this land a little closer to the letter and spirit of the law than has been the case of late. But above all, my real hope resides in the fact that movements, protest, struggles, resistance, contestations on the ground
have
they
had
would get strong.
electoral impact.
They have had electoral impact, but even if they have no electoral impact, for example, NTCA protests may not have had any electoral impact, but it, contestation is at the heart of democracy. Contestation in election, outside election. And as I keep saying, संसद से बड़ी है सड़क. सड़क पे क्या होता है? Those contestations will get strong. They would have greater resolve, greater confidence. And that, to my mind, is where I rest my hopes. That would get strong. I see a lot of friends somehow assuming that the present dependence on TDP and JDU will somehow make Mr. Modi more democratic. And yesterday he used the word consensus. I would not, it's good to hear the word
Sarvamat. He said Sarvamat.
Sarvamat, consensus. These are so, but I would take my time before I believe in those words. I think, what happens with authoritarian rulers is this. After some point, they start believing that everything can be managed. Everyone can be managed. Everyone has a price, or everyone can be coerced. It will take some time before Mr. Modi can be dissuaded. Mr. Modi and Mr. Shah can be dissuaded, if at all, they can be dissuaded.
You're thinking otherwise.
For me, the most important thing, this is a word I've used very often in what I've been saying for the last 4 or 5 days, is कि सरकार है लेकिन इकबाल नहीं. And
you've written about it.
Now, this is a word that goes back to pre-modern understanding of politics and state. That you could be a king, but being a king is not enough. You need to have Iqbal. You need to have, the people must believe in your eminence, in your legitimacy, in your moral authority. Having power, having coercive power is not enough. You need to have legitimacy in the eyes of the people. And something this election has done is to diminish that. You began by talking about Mr. Modi stands diminished or the BJP stand diminished. I think that's a very right way of capturing it. What has diminished is Iqbal. Iqbal has been diminished. And that opens up spaces.
And Yogendra, in 2014 and 2019, he did have Iqbal. Fair to say?
Absolutely, absolutely. No doubt about it.
He
In fact, in
squandered it away.
2000, he squandered it away. I think this is what happens with every ruler, especially authoritarian rulers. For example, for 13 months, Mr. Modi could not believe that farmers are here to stay and they're not moving away. I mean, he had within 1 month, he should have known that they are not going to move. They are here to stay and they have a genuine grievance. It took him 12 more months to see the writings on the wall. This happens with all such. There's absolutely no doubt that in 2014 and 2019, Mr. Modi was seen to be someone who was a legitimate ruler, even by those who may not have voted for him. That's important. Everyone says, ye to hai. For whatever reason, I can be a critic of Mr. Modi. And when many of my friends said after 2019 that he has won because of EVM, I wrote to say, don't be silly. People of this country have voted for him. You may dislike the reasons, so do I. But let's not deny that. No, that Iqbal has been diminished. And what it does in this instance is that it opens up democratic spaces. It opens up spaces. It opens up contestatory spaces. That's important.
What happens to the BJP's Hindutva project? Because, when you look at the vote share between the previous election and this election is just about 1.5% or so. You're the expert. And what does that mean, therefore, for the Hindutva project? Because remember, in January, we had the inauguration of the Ayodhya Mandir. And immediately after that, there were a lot of people who started talking about Kashi, Mathura, etc. The litany and that Hindutva project. What happens to that? And what happens to the Hindutva project as it plays out on the ground? Even today, as we record this, there is an incident of lynching in Chhattisgarh of suspected cattle, people smuggling cattle. So the question is that what happens to this after the election, both at the level of the government and the BJP and on the ground, where it had, there was a lot of support and tacit endorsement of a lot of majoritarian Hindu, violence and actions.
If Hindutva is the name of a project about asserting brute power of the Hindu majority, the project of politically mobilizing Hindus as Hindus across everything, and inciting hatred and violence so as to mobilize them into a vote bank, I think BJP must have realized that they have reached limits to that project. I may be opposed to BJP. I am. I find them dangerous, but I don't think they are idiots. They understand what's happening. The message is loud and clear. And the message has come not just in the overall. Look, overall vote share is down only by 1%, which cannot be seen to be a strong indictment against. But let's not forget two contexts here. Number one, this 1% decline is actually the net effect of two things. BJP vote has gone up substantially in south and east coastal areas, and it's gone down substantially in the areas where BJP swept. Now, the message comes from those areas where it has come down. BJP's success in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana and Odisha is not the success of Hindutva. It's a success of regional politics against incumbents. They are smart enough to see that it's not a success of Hindutva. And BJP's decline in not just Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Rajasthan, Haryana, and loss of votes in many other states, in Maharashtra, Karnataka, it clearly points to limits that politics of Hindu majoritarianism had reached a saturation point, that it does not give any more dividends, that it gives negative dividends. And the message comes more sharply from Faizabad itself, Ayodhya itself. Uh, I think they're smart enough to realize that does. And if at all BJP did get some 37 seats in Uttar Pradesh, it was not because of the residual effect of Ayodhya. It was the residual effect of ration, residual effect of law and order, which is seen to be progressive. You and I may not agree, but people do believe that law and order has improved. So they are smart enough to see what has worked and what has not. And I think that, to my mind, is really a very positive lesson, because somehow people in BJP thought that Ayodhya temple would do what Pulwama had done in 2019. That has not happened. And thank God, thank Ram that it hasn't.
You know, you have spoken in the past to me and you've written about it, about how religion is inextricably a part of India's makeup, of our population's makeup, and the left parties and the left thinking and ideology, which absolutely shunned religion, had a role to play, or was in a way partially contributed to the BJP's rise and its creation of a Hindu vote bank and Hindu appeasement. That's what they've done. Today, do you feel that religion still has that strong a role to play? Has that weakened a little bit? Can it be mined again electorally in the way it was?
So I've spoken of the message for the BJP. What is the message for secular politics?
Yeah, I was going to
The
come to that.
message for secular politics is,
Hmm.
which includes the left, liberals, call them by any name,
Yeah.
broadly secular progressive
Yeah.
politics. If they think that the message is religion does not matter and that Hindutva politics has been defeated, this would be a completely mistaken, self-serving way of reading the verdict. What it says is, A, yes, it reached a saturation point, and yes, it cannot be used in every single election. And yes, ordinary everyday life issues do matter. But I would not forget the fact, because when I was traveling, I was speaking to everyone about the mandir. They would not speak themselves. But I would check, अच्छा वो मंदिर बनाया था, नहीं सब वो तो अच्छा काम किया था. Complete consensus that mandir was a good idea. Unlike what you and I might think, most people thought Prime Minister's presence in Ayodhya was not a bad idea. They did not think he was crossing a line or something. Yes, they didn't like the fact that this was being milked for elections. That's where they draw the line. For secular politics, similarly, there are very serious lessons. Not only this verdict, generally, to assume that therefore religion does not matter and we can wish it away would be a completely mistaken reading. To my mind, secular politics has been has seriously misread Indian society, and we have conflated religious feelings with communal feelings. Someone like Gandhi never conflated the two. India is a country of believers. Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs. We are a country of believers, and and secular politics has been either indifferent or contemptuous of these religious beliefs. This doesn't work. I'm a second generation atheist. My father was a non-believer. So am I. But over the years, Anuradha, I have more and more.
I know this. This is something that has been a journey for you as well personally, isn't it?
That's right. So, Anuradha, for me, I'm not only more and more tolerant towards religion, I'm actually more and more respectful to religion. Uh, Unfortunately, we modern, people with some modern education and, the first generation atheists or some, we've come to associate religion with superstitions. We've come to associate religion with uh, blind hatred and so on and so forth. That's a completely mistaken religion. religion, I mean, the more I think of it, I think of religion as a language. You can use a language to write the most hateful stuff. You can use the same language to write poetry, love poetry, compassion, and everything. Religion is like that. And I think we secular politics must learn to come to terms with religion, to respect it, to understand it. And the one person we need to go back to is Mahatma Gandhi. Remember, he called himself a Sanatani Hindu till the last day of his life. Not that you and I need to turn into Sanatani Hindu. I cannot. I mean, there's no point in pretending. If you're not, you should not pretend. You should stick to your honest beliefs. But to respect people's religion and understand religion. If communism could be used for the most progressive purposes in the world and could also be used as a shield to murder millions of people, so are religions. This is true of every belief.
So
Uh,
so
yeah.
this time round, we saw that the Congress did not go for the Ram Mandir inauguration. It stayed away from religion completely, which I found very interesting. A few elections ago, we saw Rahul Gandhi at least do the temple run, and a lot of critics said that this is Hindutva light or whatever you want to call it. But this time they stayed away from it. How do you explain this strategy that they adopted? Was it a strategy?
I think more than Congress's strategy, it was Rahul Gandhi's personal resolve. And I give him credit for that. When I taking religion seriously, doesn't mean that you go for that kind of tamasha that BJP was staging. Because what happened in Ayodhya was clearly political theater. And there was no way opposition should have legitimized it. And I think they did the right thing by not doing so. Uh, was it part of any grand strategy? It must have. Congress must have thought it through. But to my mind, the most important element in that thinking must have been Rahul Gandhi's personal resolve. In 2022, after the loss of Uttar Pradesh, there was this sense of gloom in the political establishment. And everyone believed that now Hindutva is the only pitch on which politics can be played. Rahul Gandhi stood out and said, "No, I shall not do it." And he, in the yatra, the first Bharat Jodo Yatra, he took this stand, mohabbat ki dukaan, and so. And in that context, speaking of mohabbat was actually a radical political stance. I give him credit for that. And I think Congress did the right thing by sticking to that situation. And from there, you can develop. In fact, Rahul personally, I think, has deep interest in religion. I mean, he's not a religious person, but he's kind of a semi-spiritual person. He has deep interest in Hindu mythology and Hindu religion and so on. And that is what you need in this country. Deep respect for religions, not just one religion. But when it comes to state, state must keep a principled distance from religion. That's the only thing that works in this country. And Congress is closer to that. So I must give Congress the credit for that. More than any other party in this country, Congress must get the credit.
Now let's address your change in how you perceive the Congress. In 2019, you had famously said the Congress must die. If it could not stop the BJP in this election to save the idea of India, this party has no positive role in Indian history. Today, it represents the single biggest obstacle to the creation of an alternative. What has changed between 2019 and 24 in your perception of the Congress? And how does it build on forward from where it is today?
Two things change, Anuradha. I'm glad you read the entire para, not just the headline, because I actually had critiqued Congress because it had not taken on the BJP seriously. Yeah. So it was not that BJP is better, Congress is bad. I mean, I said this 2019 was a turning point in the history of this country. You are the largest party. It's your first duty is to put everything to defeat it. And I thought Congress did not, or whether that was a correct assessment or not. To my mind, two things have changed. Number one, Congress 2022 onwards, beginning with that resolve, that impressed me. And if you notice that article, in that article, which was one of the most damning things against Congress, I say Rahul Gandhi is more sincere than any politician I've met, and he's more intelligent than anyone thinks he is. So two things changed. Number one, Congress's principled resolve to number one on the secular issue, number two on the Nyaya issue, which is actually realigning itself to the objectives of this country and to the roots of the Congress party itself. And number two was an assessment that the challenge was just too big now, and capacity to create an alternative was almost non-existent. Frankly, we've tried to create alternatives. We have a party called Swaraj India. We worked. I was with Aam Aadmi Party. Aam Aadmi Party, what happened in Aam Aadmi Party did not strengthen my belief that alternatives could remain viable, because they chose the path of viability and left alternatives. And we pursued the path of alternative and could not achieve viability. And in Haryana, in other places, we were nowhere close to viability. You need money. We had none. So we came to the conclusion, it's not just my personal conclusion, we came to the conclusion that if you have to defend the country from what seemed like an inevitable slide into not just authoritarian rule, a plain and simple authoritarian rule, we must work with the existing political formation, mainstream political formations, those who can be trusted to take on the BJP. Congress was the largest of them. Congress had a principal role to play there. And but we also supported others. We worked with Samajwadi Party. We formed Bharat Jodo Abhiyan. So we began by first supporting Rahul Gandhi's Yatra and clearly declaring that we would support any such initiative which is for the defense of the Republic. And in the election, Bharat Jodo Abhiyan took a position that we would support India candidates everywhere. So it's not just the Congress. We worked with Samajwadi Party, we worked with NCP, with Shiv Sena, with TMC in places where it was contesting against Congress.
How do people see Bharat Jodo Abhiyan and the role that you play? You describe yourself as a political activist, the foundation, Swaraj Foundation. What is the role? How does one, is this a pressure group? How, in political theory terms, what is the role that you represent today and the foundation and the group that you represent today?
In Western political theory, it would be called civil society groups. I don't like that term. I would still think of Andolan. Andolan is a much better, people's movements and people's organizations. Just to give a different example, you see, there's the BJP and there's the Sangh parivar. And BJP's political strength does not come only from BJP's own electoral and political presence. It is the larger Sangh parivar whose presence gives BJP the stability, the depth, the penetration that it has. The opposition is weaker vis-a-vis the BJP, not only because they are weaker than BJP. That difference is, maybe they are weaker, but the difference is not that big. The real problem is that the larger circle that they can draw from doesn't exist. There used to be Congress Seva Dal. I mean, earlier you had hundreds and thousands of organizations. I think of the Rashtra Seva Dal. I think of Congress Seva Dal. I would think of Kisan Sabhas of the Communist Party. Among the socialists, you have the Samajwadi Yuv Jan Sabha, all kinds of organizations. Those have diminished. So while the BJP is being supported by a larger umbrella of organizations, the opposition doesn't have anything like that to draw upon. Not because those things don't exist, but they are not connected to the opposition. We have a very large circle of people's movements. These could be farmers' movement, Dalit movement, women's movement, labor movement, movements for right to education, on health, on information. This country has very rich and vibrant civil society. The trouble is that this was not connected to the electoral effort. This entire civil society would wait, watch, wring their hands, and say, oh my God, what's happening here? What Bharat Jodo Abhiyan did. We did it about 120 constituencies this time. We identified those constituencies and we said we would now gather all the energy outside political parties and connect it to this effort of defeating the BJP. Our intuition was, and I think it's a correct intuition, that the energy to take on RSS and BJP uh, primarily resides outside opposition political parties. If you think of activists who are determined, कुछ भी हो जाए RSS BJP के खिलाफ खड़े होंगे, you would find those kinds of people less in opposition parties, more outside political parties. So we gathered that energy, which I thought I said is a huge pool of energy available in the country: energy, ideas, activists, organizations, networks. We've just begun to tap into that,
and managed to
wherever
connect
I
them.
go, yeah, to connect without bringing them under one single umbrella. Bharat Jodo Abhiyan is not an organization; it's a platform. We come together and say, all right, we all think there is a strong challenge to our republic, that for the moment we should set everything aside. That for purposes of this election, we should prioritize the elections over other work that we are doing for this period. Number two, we should forget all ifs and buts and support the principal party that can defeat the BJP. And C, we should forget all other considerations, our other unease about what they did in 1984, what they did in 1942 or whatever. And for the moment, just prioritize this, or my concerns about environment, my concerns about this. For the time being, I'll focus on this. And believe me, there was
goals, getting together on common goals, almost like a minimum program, a common minimum program.
Yeah, common minimum program to address a threat that all of us recognize to be the principal threat. Namely, this election was not just one more election. This election was not about kaun banega Pradhan Mantri. This election truly was an election about this country's future, about whether this republic survives or not, what happens to our democracy. And the very simple example I used to give in public meetings is, the point where you reach and you see suddenly a flyover. And in our poorly marked, poor signage, sometimes you just stop before the flyover and say, idhar jana hai ki udhar jana. And if you get onto the flyover, there is no U-turn for the next 20 kilometers. And I used to say, this election is like that. You get onto flyover, there's no turning back for 20 years. And if you do not get together at this moment in history, we all will regret. And that's my sense at the end of this election, that at least, BJP is not vanquished. It's here to stay. And the challenge has not gone away. But at least in this David versus Goliath kind of contest, David has managed to give a bloody nose to Goliath. That's important. That gives space. And at least that the rapid fall has been halted. I would not read more than that. It's been halted. So much more needs to be done.
So very quickly, what is how do you build on this punch to Goliath, to use your analogy? How does the Abhiyan work on this? How do opposition parties who are competing electorally work on this? And is it state by state? Is it Maharashtra and then Haryana? Is that the way to go? And how do you keep this going for the next 5 years so that you can better this side, your side's performance?
One is in the short term, Haryana, Jharkhand, and Maharashtra, which come up in September, October. All these three states, right now, the opposition is a front runner. Even if in Jharkhand, opposition seats are less than BJP, they still have a very serious possibility. And Maharashtra and Haryana, of course, they are front runners. So converting this in all these three states is a must. Number two, working on on other contestatory spaces outside elections. That is to say, farmers, workers, Dalits, and all the movements. Street contestation, Jan Andolon, is as important as elections, so strengthening that. And number three, BJP RSS is in the last instance an ideological change. It's a battle of ideas that people like us have lost to them. And it has to be fought at the plane of ideas, ideology, culture. That deep term, long term battle must begin now. We propose to work on all the three. And believe me, Anuradha, the effort that it takes for, say, someone like Congress Party, the effort that it has taken for them to move from 50 to 100, with that much effort, you can move from 100 to 250, provided you keep at it. And that's important. Keeping the coalition together, keeping that resolve together, not moving away from the core idea that you have formulated. After a long, long time, Congress has started connecting to its own social base, namely the bottom of the pyramid. And it has begun to reap rewards for, but we've just seen a trailer, to use Mr. Modi's words. We've just seen a trailer in this election. Mr. Modi had said, "Abhi to sirf trailer dekha." I would also say, "Abhi to sirf trailer dekha. Ab dekhiye aage kya."
So, Yogendra, आगे क्या होता है ये तो बस ट्रेलर है. Good words to close this conversation on. We'll keep talking and good luck. And what an exciting election that we witnessed, and not just witnessed as spectators, but as participants and citizens of this country. So, thank you very much for joining me, and I wish you a lot of good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.